Hi everyone, this is a tutorial to demonstrate how to work a contrast colour lateral braid. Now here I'm going to be working with two colours, and I've got black. The black yarn is my main colour, and I'm going to be working a contrast colour lateral braid with this peachy colour. Now the first thing to mention is how to hold your yarns when you're working this braid. Normally for colour work, it's recommended that you hold your dominant colour, the colour you want to stand out more, usually in your left hand. For most people that is the dominant position, and then you'd hold your the colour that you kind of want to be the background colour in your right hand, or if you hold both yarns in the same hand, you'd position them like this, so that the colour you want as your standout colour, your dominant colour, is on the left and your background colour is on the right. Now for a lateral braid, a contrast colour lateral braid, I actually recommend doing the opposite. Now the reason for that is that when you work the lateral braid, it actually sits on the round below the one that you're currently working. So here, for example, as we work the lateral braid, you'll see that it ends up sitting on these stitches that are on my needle at the moment, ones that have already been worked as I work the following round. And if you hold your contrast colour in your non-dominant hand, it sits really nicely in the middle of that stitch, and is kind of like really nicely balanced with the stitches above and below. Whereas if you hold the colour in your dominant hand, it will sit actually a little bit lower between the two rows of stitches, and is less balanced in a situation like this where you've got colour work surrounding it. And you can see what I'm talking about here. So on this one, on this lateral braid here, I've switched the position on purpose to show you what happens. So here I was holding the lateral braid in the non-dominant position, and as you can see there's a nice gap of one round of main colour separating the lateral braid and this other colour work that we've got going on. And you can literally see the moment that I have switched to holding it in the dominant position. So here you can see the lateral braid takes a bit of a nosedive here, and then sits much lower, almost below, kind of in between those two rows of stitches. So that's why I recommend holding it in the non-dominant position for this, because I think you get a better balance in terms of the positioning of the braid. Okay, here's how to actually work this contrast colour lateral braid. So you start the beginning of the round with a backwards loop cast on with your contrast colour. Now at the very end of the round, you'll decrease this stitch. So this overall doesn't affect the stitch count that you're working with. You increase at the start and then you decrease at the end of the round. Okay, now we're ready to start the pattern properly. So you start by slipping your contrast colour from right needle to left needle, and then you're going to switch the position of your first and second stitches on the needle. And the way I do this is I treat it, I suppose, almost exactly like a cable to the front. So what I would do here is I'd use my right needle, insert it into the back of that second stitch, slip both those stitches off the needle, and then just quickly bring my left needle round to the front and grab that contrast colour that's just now loose, and then pop my main colour, my black yarn, back onto the left needle again. So all I've done there is switch the position of the first and the second stitches on that left needle. And then you'll knit with the correct colour, the corresponding colour. So you'll knit your main colour stitch with your main colour, and then you'll knit your contrast colour with your contrast colour. Now what I recommend here is that you pop your needle into the stitch, but then before you knit it, give a good tug on that yarn, because when you slip it, it tends to get a little bit loose. And that pattern then is repeated to the end of the round. So you slip your contrast colour back to your left needle, you switch the positions of your first and second stitches on your left needle. And remember, it's just like you're doing a cable to the front. So each time the contrast colour moves in front of the main colour. Then you'll knit your main colour stitch, pop your needle into that contrast stitch, give a little tug, and knit that second stitch. And that pattern is repeated all the way to the end of the round. Okay, so I've been repeating that pattern of slipping the contrast colour back to the left needle, changing the positions as if you're cabling to front, and then knitting each of those stitches. And I'm repeating that until I reach the very last stitch of the round, which is here. So on the very last stitch of the round, as I mentioned before, you're going to decrease this contrast colour stitch to maintain the stitch count that you had previously. So as before, you're going to return your contrast colour to the left needle and change the positions of these two stitches as if you're cabling to the front. And then this last bit is a little bit different. So you're going to slip, slip, knit to decrease. So slip one knitwise, slip the contrast colour knitwise, and then knit those two together to decrease that extra stitch that you created at the start of the round. Okay, I'm just going to knit one more stitch just to secure my marker, and I'm going to show you one more thing. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is sort of the end of your lateral braid. Now, as you can see, between the beginning and the end of your lateral braid, there is this jog in the round because of working in this kind of spiral shape. And if that bothers you, what you can do is, using a kind of a length of the same colour, you can create a kind of a duplicate stitch, a pretend lateral braid stitch, to kind of help join those ends together, and also just to hoist the start of your lateral braid up a little bit and the end down a little bit, so that they meet a little bit better, which helps just disguise that jog in the round. So I've got a length of my contrast colour on a tapestry needle here, and what I'm going to do is, from the back, I'm going to come up through the middle of that last lateral braid stitch, and make sure you come up through the middle of that stitch, not kind of in the gap between the two stitches. Make sure you leave an end on the wrong side to weave in later. And then I'm going to pop my needle on the right side through the two legs of this first lateral braid stitch. Oops. Picking up some of the main colour there by mistake. Okay, so through those two legs of that lateral braid, the first lateral braid stitch, and then if you pull that fairly snugly, you can see already it's starting to pull that first stitch up and a little bit closer to the last stitch. And then you're going to go back down through that same spot through to the wrong side. And that creates an extra kind of pretend lateral braid stitch, and helps to join up the two ends of the braid and just kind of hide, to some extent, that jog in the round that you would see otherwise. Okay, so that is how to work the contrast colour lateral braid stitch. I hope it helps.